All right, guys. So, very tough loss for Oregon tonight. Whew. Brutal game for Oregon. Good game if you're a neutral spectator, but a very tough game if you're a fan of Oregon. And I really like Oregon. I love what Dan Lanning was building. This team really had a clear shot to the college football playoff. And I didn't see Washington coming in the Autzen and having that performance. But, Michael Penix played the best game of his career. And actually, Michael Penix playing his ceiling game is actually maybe the best quarterback in the Pac-12. I mean, Bo Nix is a great player. DTR doesn't even have the arm of Michael Penix, and neither actually does Bo. And this guy is just a mega talent, and against really talented offenses, Oregon has struggled. And Arizona this year, when they caught Arizona, they benefited from turnovers. That was earlier in the season. But Arizona was going to be tough for Oregon. And even UCLA, UCLA's offense still had a lot of success against the Ducks. And the defense has kind of been solid. They've taken advantage of bad opponents like Cal and Stanford, but against Washington State, against UCLA, and that the tough part is, Dan always talks about improving the team, and I guess improvement isn't always linear. Or you can have a great week of practice and you can improve in some areas, but the improvements didn't show up tonight because Oregon just got handled. All right, so Penix throws for over 400 yards, has no resistance at all. The secondary gets absolutely torched earth. And play of the game is that third down. That cover two hole shot, which is a tremendous throw by Michael Penix, but the safety doesn't play the ball. And the rail route, he doesn't ensure that Washington will get out of bounds. And, Dan Lanning, the team goes for it a lot. They even went for it on the first half, that 4th and 2, when Oregon did all those fakes, fake hard count, and then decided to go for it. They play aggressive, but also if you have a shutdown defense, if you have a shutdown defense, you're not on your third punter, you can really pin Washington deep and really win a football game. I mean, this offense is championship caliber. These running backs like Whittingham and Bucky Irving. Noah Whittingham today really ran the ball spectacularly well. Like, there's times when he could be caught for a 1-yard gain and he'll make it a 6 or 7-yard game, and then Bucky will spin off and get you 20 or 23 yards. I mean, Carlos Loughlin's done a great job. Junior Adams and this O-line. I mean, Fortriff, tonight, in and out of the lineup was really tough. And then that Bo Nix play, of course, late in the game where he kind of gets banged up, and you're really worried about Bo Nix, and he still could have a lingering ankle or leg injury that is going to make him questionable for next week. So 4th and 1 in that situation there with Washington. If you end up punting the ball, your defense has just been getting shredded all night, and that's what's so frustrating is they always play off coverage. Even if it's 3rd and 10, Michael Penix will just drop back in the pocket, and then he'll play off coverage. And I think it's because they got burned on that post route. And, Lanning knows that outside of Gonzalez, this secondary is really young. And then they weren't winning up front. They don't have that electric pass rusher. Like LSU, who is competing kind of on the same level of Oregon, they have Harold Perkins, who's an 18-year-old, but is a tremendous talent and tremendous game-wrecking player. And Oregon has a couple of nice players like Sewell and Brandon Dorius, but Dorius and them tonight, Washington just beat them. And maybe Oregon was looking ahead to Utah. And also, let's face it, I mean, Oregon has always won by 2 scores. Cal, Stanford. Let's look at all the games that they've played lately. Arizona. I mean, you're either putting your backups in the fourth quarter. You're not sweating out a fourth quarter game. Even UCLA, you weren't sweating that out. And tonight, I mean, this offense that the Huskies have is an electric offense. These receivers are the best that Oregon plays. This quarterback, especially the way he played tonight, he even played better than Stetson Bennett. Like, he was one of the best quarterbacks in the country. You're facing a 4-year guy who transferred in from Indiana that really has no good receivers really at Indiana other than like Freifogel, and he left. So like Indiana football, guys, come on, it's Indiana football. Like Michael Penix, just watch the guy throw the ball as a lefty. He is a real talent. This guy is a mega talent throwing the ball. I mean, he could throw it 45 yards, 55 yards on a rope. I mean, his release is extremely fast, and you give him protection, and this guy can throw at any. This guy could be a professional, whether he's playing in the NFL. He's one of the best quarterbacks that we have. I mean, he could be a guy that could even be drafted. So Bo Nix is a guy as well. So these guys were duking it out, and Oregon it's sad because I wanted Dan Lanning in year one. It's so cool, to see if Dan Lanning could like really take Oregon to that next level, because in the Pac-12, Oregon was still getting overlooked. They were still getting overlooked, all right, in the Pac-12. This team was still getting overlooked by pundits and by people, all right? And now Oregon loses to Washington, and now they're no longer in the playoff discussion. But it would have been amazing had, Georgia beaten Oregon. The fact that Oregon dropped this game, I mean, with Cameron Rising coming in, who he's not as elusive. I mean, he's more elusive than Michael Penix, but when you're a team who runs the ball, Oregon's D-line can stop the run pretty decently. They just can get thrown on, and Kalen DeBoer, I mean, he's just a really good coach, and he schemes it up really well, and it sucks to go against him. It sucks, and this Washington team has played tough all year, and it's a great hire by Washington. It really is. This guy, you could tell how good of a coach he is and how good of a team it is. Washington just played their A game, and Oregon played their C game today. Penix was tremendous. Like that throw down the field, the 2 touchdowns, the 2 long to TDs. First half, they came out, they smacked Oregon right out of the gates. It was a big recruiting weekend for Oregon this week. And then Bo Nix, he fumbled there on the 1-yard line, which was horrible. Kenny Dillingham just getting way too cute in that. I mean, the play clock, that was the issue. They rushed that. It was fine, but they rushed it. Tons of drop passes like Bucky Irving on the last drive. The offensive line, even before the half, old Bo Nix and Oregon would score in a minute. The pass rush of the Huskies tonight, their defensive game plan was just brilliant. They would rush 3 guys or 4 guys and drop everybody in the coverage so that there were a couple chances for explosives, and Oregon was able to hit those later. But in the first half, Washington defense really held Oregon in check to 10 points all first half. And then Lanning, did he go for it on the first half? I think he did. And then, he went for it, I think, back in his own territory. And then that play at the end really hurt him. I mean, if you punt it theoretically, I mean, it's just the defense was just getting carved. So I don't know if I blame the scheme that much, because maybe Tosh Lupoi is thinking like on those out patterns, maybe they're just really tough to cover and you're taking away the inside. But Michael Penix doesn't really throw on the inside. But there weren't a lot of the only contested throws that you saw were maybe that Christian Gonzalez play. But other than that, the guys were running open, and the throw game of Washington was unimpeded by Oregon and by the secondary. And I still trust Lupoi. I really like this team. I like this coaching staff a lot. I think that they're going to get tremendous pass rushers that are going to come in here and that are going to help alleviate the secondary. I just wanted it to happen this year because it's like this is kind of like a ragtag underdog team with Bo Nix coming from Auburn, first year. You know, they got stumped by Georgia, and I wanted redemption with Georgia. I wanted some magical story where, bam, they run the table. And the way they were able to beat Washington State, the way they were able to claw their way all the way up to this point and keep winning and winning and winning and winning these games. It was just so impressive to rattle off like 8 straight wins. And it's heartbreaking that they lose to, you know, a rival like this right before Utah, and they had a chance to go Utah Civil War and then play again. You'd play a USC or a UCLA. But Washington, it's just Michael Penix and this Washington team. Yeah, I'll admit, I didn't see them coming in the Autzen and winning. And I also thought Oregon's defense, even though they probably are making progress in practice, they might be a better team. They just had an awful game. They just played awful. Defensively, offensively with the turnovers. Even Bo Nix was skittish doing jump passes. He wasn't perfect. He wasn't really precise. He had a couple of great long throws in this game, but Washington made Oregon uncomfortable, and it was so frustrating because when Oregon took a 4-point lead, you wanted to break apart from Washington, and you just couldn't do it. And maybe you look back in hindsight to that final possession or that second to last possession, or third to last, when they ran that beautiful 9-minute drive. Maybe they should have went for the throat, like when they got to the 25-yard line, do a little play action, get it in the end zone, instead of just doing all of these runs. Terrible high snap play, terrible play, where just a disaster on 2nd and 5 makes it like third, and where you gain no yards there. And when you're running that kind of series, you can't have those mistakes. So the fumble center exchanges tonight, it was a mess with Fortriff being hurt and everything. It was a complete mess. That fumble was ridiculous in the first half. It caught up to them. And when your secondary is that weak against this passing offense, you have to play well. And Oregon just, I think that it's natural for college kids or for any human, even if they're 68 years old, to get overconfident when you're blowing the doors off of everybody. And then you have Utah coming in, and you have Washington as a first-year coach, and Washington lost to UCLA, and then Washington lost to Arizona State. So you're like, how good is this Washington team? But gosh, they are playing their best football now, and they are improving. And they are just such a pain in the ass. And that receiver that went up there against Gonzalez, they just made tremendous plays. All right. Sometimes it hurts to tip your cap to a rival, but they made tremendous plays. And I liked getting psyched up for the rivalry, like playing all the music in practice. Did they get too overamped? The going for it is going for it, and usually Oregon can sometimes succeed. But they have to get better in special teams. And then when this team has a really, really good defense, like the best of the best, then you want to see if Dan Lanning can actually know when to take points, when to punt the ball away. But I'm really confident in Lanning. I like everything I see. I'm sure next week they'll come out against Utah and probably blow them out and play great. And then it'll be USC. And that's a nightmare matchup because then you have Lincoln, Caleb Williams, Jordan Addison, all the top receivers at USC. And that'll probably be like a freaking 55 to 48 kind of a game. And it'll be tough anyway. But hey, I mean, playing Georgia out of conference is tough. But ending the regular season, 10-2? That would be a tremendous year. You go 10-2 first year. That's a really good season. That's big. I know Mario went like that, but this Pac-12 is getting better. I even got to admit tonight, I watched Jed Fish, and I didn't like that hire at the time, like another Patriot coach. You look at McDaniels coming from that tree, Matt Patricia. I know he's going to college, but is the guy going to be just very, can he recruit to Arizona? And they get Jaden DeLaura come over from Washington State. He's fantastic. They get Cowing in the transfer portal. And their offense was just terrific tonight. And Jed Fish actually called a game, and they were able to control the clock. You have DeBoer. It's funny because these quarterbacks now, I mean, you're going to have a young quarterback at Oregon next year. You're going to have a young quarterback probably at Washington. So unless maybe it's Heward's a nephew's going to play. But I'll tell you, Michael Penix can play. There is no doubt about it. And when you catch him on the wrong night, when you catch him when he has his fastball on, because sometimes he makes those. The reason why he wasn't considered like one of the best quarterbacks in college is because he can have a half like he did against UCLA first half where he throws 3 interceptions, where he is a turnover machine, where he makes ill-advised decisions because he's so confident, or sometimes he doesn't read the field perfectly. Tonight, he was reading it, seeing it, made a terrible decision on that goal line, and then Washington still made a couple of bad decisions. The 4th and 1, they didn't go for it, but maybe they just didn't trust their running game or whatever, and Oregon gave them a penalty again. Again, Oregon making mistakes. And then Washington, too, after Dan Lanning, after they fail, they get a perfect play for them, a 9-yard play setting up 2nd and 1, 2 timeouts, and there's like 1:10 on the clock. So what you do there is you wind that clock down, force Lanning to take a timeout. They don't. They inexplicably hike the ball with like 5 seconds left and throw it incomplete, like a terrible play. Not only does it stop the clock, but they didn't get that first down. And then after that, they then try to run it, and then they get stuffed, and then they elect to go for the field goal. But really, if they ran it on 2nd and 1, odds are with the way they're running the ball, they get a first down. Lanning and by the way, on that 2nd down, you let the clock roll, so Lanning uses his timeout. Then they kneel it. They get it to the spot for the kicker, and he's kicking a 35-yarder for the win, which is what he made anyway, and then Oregon doesn't get to touch it at all. But Bo Nix, a clutch conversion, the Fleming, on that 4th and 13, and then an incredible throw, I believe, was it Fleming or Franklin? I think it's Franklin. And he got his foot down, but again, like the cameras didn't see, him get forced out. Crazy call to make it at that juncture. Maybe there's an issue with the Dillingham scheme. It's very disappointing, though. Disappointing game because you wanted to see the team, again, have a shot. It is very tough to run the table. The one thing is about the 14 playoff that is kind of good is that it made this game so intense. Like every game's like a playoff game. When it's 12 teams, Oregon will easily get in. It takes the suspense out of the regular season, though, because next week, right, I mean, even if it's a 16 playoff, like 6 is, I think, a great number of teams. Because then you'd get a Pac-12 champ in there. I mean, but the fact that it's a 14 playoff, like even TCU Texas was a tremendous game, Arkansas LSU. So the fact it's 4 teams, it does make tonight tough. And I don't know, it also makes like the playoffs just very hard to obtain. But that should be a good thing. Like something really worthwhile in life should be really, really hard, right? Everything that's incredibly special in life should be incredibly difficult to obtain, not easy to obtain, not easily obtained by everybody. You should try to be the elite of the elite. You should try to be special, be different, not be like average or be like others. So, with 12-team playoff, it's going to change things, but it's sad because Bo is still having a great year. You hope he could finish the year strong against, and he would have had his Heisman moment if he actually hit like the game winner or came in there on that 4th and 1, but Dan Lanning didn't want to get him injured. Lanning could have called a timeout on that 4th and 1, but I liked him going for it. You know why? Because, again, if you punt it back to Washington with your punter, Michael Penix is just going to drive down and beat you anyway with no timeouts because your defense couldn't stop anybody. So who do you trust more? Your running back getting a yard, which it had all night, which Lanning's completely correct, or your defense? And the call, too, was right up the gut, so maybe they could have got somebody on the edge. Also, the fact that Robinson or that Ty Thompson wasn't a threat to run or throw, it didn't work out. And the guy slipped, but it didn't look like it was well blocked at all. And I think it was a backup center at that time, like Powers or something. But then a great 4th and 13, and then they defended it well. And then Oregon, too, like a little loophole thing is like, they did the cramp, and I'm sure the guy had a cramp. But again, that really, I'm telling you, whoever's on the wrong side of that would be upset if the cramp was being utilized to stop clock. But that was, something that occurred. Alrighty, guys. The offense in the second half was just diming it up and playing typical Oregon offense. This offense is just so good. With Kenny Dillingham, year one, and an erratic Bo Nix that was coming from Auburn, the fact that this offense, the running backs, and everybody are just so efficient, so good, in such sync with Merringer, Adams, Lachlan, it's something to be really encouraged about. But tonight's defense was just the Achilles heel, and it reared its ugly head tonight, and it really hasn't been fixed, and it'll only be fixed through another year in the program, and it'll be fixed for recruiting and more competition. But some of these guys like Florence and Tucker, who are freshmen, I think they're going to be really good players. Terrell, so all these guys that are really young are going to go through a year of training, and so it's just year one. But it would have been so much fun if they were able to pull it off. And like Washington, I just didn't think they had it in them as a 12-point dog, and Oregon's just been rolling so good, and I think it seeped into their heads a little bit. And then Washington just played a perfect game, and that's what makes sports. And man, it was a tremendous game. And I guess maybe it's justice for, kind of the game where I think Oregon could have won the night if they didn't fumble those 2 snaps, like Bo Nix on that 2nd and 5 late, and then that one near the goal line. But the Washington State game, Oregon completely pulled out when they really shouldn't have. The onside kick decision. Also, you did it during another predictable time. But you can always criticize the occasion that you lose. But when you're beating Colorado 49-10, you're beating Cal, you're doing your stuff. That's what I really love, is that you're beating the teams you're supposed to beat, and you're beating them so badly. That's what's impressive about Oregon. So a frustrating night for sure. But try to win the Pac-12, try to get to a Rose Bowl, and try to salvage just a great year of Bo Nix, one really special year with Bo Nix, so a tough loss to the Huskies.